Our next stop, a look at and a sound of the music of Tom Talbert, who grew up in North Minneapolis and Lake Minnetonka a long time ago. The artistry of Tom Talbert and a magnificent small group working on a classic identified with Bix Beiderbecke, In a Mist, and recreated here by Tom Talbert. There's a book that has been published this year entitled Tom Talbert, His Life and Times, Voices from a Vanished World of Music, authored by Bruce Talbot. Tom Talbert originally comes from Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I've found him at home on the West Coast, and sometimes I find him at home on the East Coast. He's in the world of music, traveling back and forth. Tom, once again, it's good to renew with you.
Well, good to talk to you, Leigh. As always, we've been doing this for 50 years or more.
At least that. And
I think it's more than that.
Oh, I think so, too. In fact, we'll explore perhaps where all of this came about at one time or another. As we go back in time, I know you and I were exposed to a variety of music, and I thought I might just ask you to listen to an excerpt of some music that you might have heard around 1941 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it sounded like this. I think you were in high school at the time, and it was Eagles Hall and the Labor Temple in Minneapolis.
Oh yeah, I remember that night. It was winter, I think, because people had great coats and puffing steam like in Dylan Thomas's poems, and I had never heard Lunceford, of course, before, and God, that was so exciting. It was I don't know what, some organization must have had the
it was a one-night stand, if I remember.
yeah, the dance, and I remember so well that, you know, getting there early, and the band came in, and they had a very shallow stage, and the band set up, and everybody's there but Earl Carruthers, the baritone player. He comes in a great big, almost moving picture type black overcoat, you know, for the winter weather. And so there's a lot of joshing from the guys, you know, where you been, what'd you do, missed the bus, and all this jazz. And of course the band is all set up, and he takes off his coat and sits down and blows into his horn, looks at Jimmy, and oh my God, you know, he drops his arm.
And this is Jimmy Lunceford who drops his arm.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and no count off or anything, you know. He just drops his arm, and they went into that arrangement of Blue Prelude that they had just recorded on Decca. And I'm telling you, to me, that was so exciting. I always, in those years, I always said, and maybe it's still true, that the two most exciting moments in music that I had, like hearing music, was that first hearing Lunceford's band the first time, and the first time in Los Angeles when Stravinsky conducted the Philharmonic, and I was there. But oh God, that Lunceford thing, the band was so great.
Your interest in European classical music helped mold and develop your approach over the years. But always there was something like the Lunceford Band or the Duke Ellington Band out there that also stimulated you in many different ways.
Oh, yeah. Thinking back to that night of at Eagles Hall, you know, there were some musicians there, and my friend Tip Morgan, who I didn't really know then, he was a little older than me, and played lead alto with Glad Ollinger's orchestra, and they were kind of aloof from the rest of us. But I remember Tippy wore a sax strap, so the people would know he was a musician.
And he, of course, later joined Claude Thornhill's band.
Yes, he was. When I wrote for Thornhill, he was on the band.
Well, now, let's just listen to a little bit more of the Lunceford Band, and then we'll shift to today and your adventures. That was Minneapolis and St. Paul of Another Day and Time. Tom, you moved to the West Coast, and you began to write for full-scale orchestras as well.
I moved to, well, I went back out to California after I got out of the Army in I got out of the Army in 45, but I went back out to California in January of 1946 and started trying to find work like anyone, of course, and it was a little bit of a scuffle, but right away started meeting great musicians, and that was, you know, inspirational in itself, and became a good friend of Johnny Richards, the famous arranger, and he encouraged me to have a band. Of course, I had no money, no connections, nothing at all to have a band with. But he said, "Oh, you should have a band," and his brother would be the manager. Well, his brother was he was all right, but he wasn't much of a manager. I think he was the last one I ever had, and the first one.
At any rate, you did manage to put a band together, and here's a sampling from one of those days, and we'll listen to it, and then you tell us a little bit how you put this all together.
in Chihuahua, there ain't nothing much to do. Down in Chihuahua, there ain't nothing much to do. Down in Chihuahua, there ain't nothing much to do.
Solamente siestas, lindas mujeres con guitarras y en vez en cuando frijoles con queso, amor, tequila y fiestas.
Down in Chihuahua, there ain't nothing much to do. Down in Chihuahua, there ain't nothing much to do. Nothing.
Tom Talbert, that's an exciting band. Parallel to you was Kenton at the time, if I remember, beginning to arise out of Balboa Beach, and there you were.
Yeah, well, they did a recording of it that was just really I mean, it wasn't very good at all. After I had done this, because Johnny Richards and Ralph Yaw had written this tune, which, as you can tell, isn't much of a tune, but it's interesting. You talking from St. Paul, because my good friend Ronnie Roche is in the trumpet section, and an alto sax player named Leighton Johnson, who, when I went to California, he and Ronnie came out, and I lost track of Leighton. I think he became a lawyer later and went, but Ronnie, of course, a wonderful trumpet player and a wonderful friend. That was the first recording, 1946.
Well, certainly, when we think about what you've been doing through the years now, in and among your collections and releases was a tribute to Duke Ellington and entitled Duke's Domain. Let's listen to some of it right now, and you tell us a little bit about it, and then we'll wrap things up and get a feel for how you arrange in this day time since 1946. Tom, we'll hear all of this, but you might just sketch for us how you thought about Lotus Blossom, which is a product of Ellington and Strayhorn's muse, and yours as well. Mm-hmm. Intriguing piece.
Oh, yeah, beautiful. You know, I thought, about that Lunceford thing. I always said that, to me, people talk about the best big bands. Of course, Lunceford is forgotten now. And my choice for the big band is Lunceford's band and Herman's First Herd.
And those are your two first choices.
Yeah, and if you heard Michael Koskana's Herman thing he put together with that stuff from the First Herd, it is just, there's so much energy in it that you can hardly stand it.
Your energy works in a different way, as in Duke's Domain here, and you're after what? Color, dynamics, you name it.
Well, that's a good description.
I'm talking with Tom Talbert. There's a book out in the Scarecrow Publishing catalog, Tom Talbert, His Life and Times, and it all began in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Bruce Talbot takes Tom through the years and all of his music adventures, and we're doing just a capsule here. It's so good to catch up with you, Tom. You've been elusive, but I know contributing.
Not intentionally.
No, not at all. At any rate, thanks so much for taking time out on this Saturday night to talk with us.
Well, thank you on this Saturday night, Leigh. I really appreciate it, and I want to send greetings to all my friends in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, as well as the rest of your network.
Well, we're happy to welcome those greetings, and till the next time, just keep that muse working and all those creative juices.
I'll work on it, Leigh.
And I'll work on it too.
Good.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night, Leigh.